Hey guys, so this is a video that I've been planning to make for a while now, and hopefully I can keep it interesting for everybody, not just the people that want to learn how to DJ and how to mix trance music, but just all you guys, because there's a lot of people that really love trance music, they're really passionate about the genre, they've got no intention or no desire to learn how to mix. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of an idea of what's actually going on when you watch a DJ. Personally, I'm not actually a DJ, I'm a musician, and DJing happens to be how you present trance music, right? And I'm so passionate about trance music that I had to learn to DJ. So there is a fundamental thing that I see, and it's a problem that a lot of people struggle with when they're learning to mix trance music. And I've taught quite a few people at this point, and this is a video that I'm creating for people to come back to so that I can just show them this and be like, this is the most fundamental thing that you can understand about trance music, that honestly, you can't find this information anywhere. I wish someone had made a video like this a few years ago when I was learning to mix trance, because there's so many in-depth tutorials and so much going on, but there is nobody pointing out this specific thing, which is that there is a moment in a track that is the perfect time for you to start the next track. And that's it, okay? That is, trance music is designed in a way, and we're going to go into some tracks here and we're going to tear them apart. I've got one of my own projects, and then I'm going to go into some other tracks and we're going to have a look. And you're going to see that the structure of trance music is a formula. It's an art of trance, and this formula has been used for decades at this point. Now, modern trance music, you know, everybody complains it's too short, that, you know, it's for the TikTok generation. But the reason it is for that is because we don't need these long introductions and outros anymore, because we have digital mixing, you know, you don't need vinyl. So the reason that we had this long format originally is to allow the DJ to mix and blend tracks. So tracks were 7 or 8 minutes long, because you needed those periods where you had some downtime with not much going on to blend the next track in. However, when you've got these modern decks, you know, like the CDJs and everything, like the Pioneer RX3 that I use, you don't need those long intros and outros, because you can just loop stuff, you can just get the tracks in straight away. So personally, I'm much more passionate about this type of trance. Like, I like the long form trance. I always use extended mixes, you know, all my transitions are long, because I think that's where the beauty in trance is. I don't like it. A lot of modern trance music these days, it's straight in, and straight away there's a riser coming up, and you've had 32 bars, and then bang, it's a breakdown section. That isn't trance music to me, but who am I to say what trance music is and isn't? So what we're going to look at, okay, first of all, is a track that I've been working on. So we're just going to have a look what's actually going on in this track, and we're going to analyze it, and we're going to compare it with other tracks, and we're going to hopefully unlock the formula of trance music, which is that you could technically have 2 tabs open on YouTube on Google Chrome, and if you press the button of play at the right moment, those 2 tracks will blend together seamlessly. You don't need any of the knobs, you don't need any of the faders, because that is technically how trance has been formulated. If they're the same BPM, that will work. So let's have a look at this track. Okay guys, so let's dive into the track. So this is the track that I've been working on. Now, what we have here, if I hide all of the automation, is we have in pink we have our drums, and then in purple here we have our bass. So that's really what we're going to focus on. Don't worry about all of this. So the yellow is just like effects, you know, risers, all the little things that make up trance music. We've got our pads in blue there, and then we've got our leads in pink. But all we're going to focus on for the purpose of this tutorial is this section here. So this section here is our intro. Now, all trance music over the years has been designed in this exact same way. So as you can see here, we have this section which is completely empty. Hopefully you can see those squares there. So those squares, that's our channel for our sub bass. So what happens here is our sub bass appears. If I show the automation for that, then what happens, you start to see this slope here. Now what this slope represents is the volume of that channel fading in. So at bar 33 here, you can see our sub is at full volume. Okay, the slope reaches its peak. So what that means is that at that moment, our sub has kicked in. Okay, so the track has dropped at that point. So that means we have all this area here where there's no sub bass. So that's our perfect area in which to blend the track. Okay, so this has been intentionally designed into the track so that you can blend it with the track that you're currently playing. So the track that you're currently playing is in its outro section. So the bass, the sub bass will still be there. Now you can either set up cue points or you can just have a look with your jog wheel, and that's what the DJ's doing with their headphones. They're listening to this track. So as you guys are hearing track 1, the track that's playing, I'm getting track 2 ready. So I'm preparing and I'm listening and I'm going, okay, the sub does this, but it fades in a little bit there, and I'm listening for other elements to see how can I blend these tracks together perfectly. Now, as track 1 is approaching its outro, I'll already have this track playing, okay? Now what we're going to do is hide that, and we're just going to have a look here at our spectrum analyzer, and we're going to see what's actually going on in terms of frequencies with our track here. So let's press play and see what happens in the first 33 bars. Now what I want you to focus on here, this end here from about 200 hertz down is our low end. So this is going to be our kick drum and a lot of our bass information. And then all of this will be our pads and all the percussion. So what I want you to focus on really is this section here. And what you're going to see at this point here, bar 33, is that this area just explodes and you see a lot more information there. So it goes from relatively sparse, all we've got is our kick drum pulsing, and then all of a sudden, bar 33, we've got a lot more information. So let's just run through this introduction here and see how that sounds. Okay, so hopefully you saw that there. What happened at bar 33? Everything just burst into life. So now let's have a look at the outro. Because what you'll find is the theory is exactly the same but reversed. So what we're going to have in our outro is all of the elements. So we're going to have all the information here, and then as we approach our last 32 bars, everything's just going to fade away. So you're still going to have elements there. We're going to have our kick drum, we're going to have our percussion, we're going to have some effects. But the main element which would clash with the next track has actually faded away. Guys, so I'm back in Cubase and I've got here Shapes, the Oliver Smith remix, Maya Levy, which is a great track. And then I've got Lola, which is the track we were just in the project file for. Now, as you can see, I've exported it and it's now a waveform. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in and we're going to have a listen to this transition. So all I've done here is put both tracks perfectly on the grid. They're both 135 BPM and they're both now perfectly in time. So if we zoom in really, really far, almost to the quantum level, then you can see here, these are the kick drums and they're perfectly in time. And that is exactly what we're doing on our decks, you know, and on our turntables when we're blending two tracks. And that's why if this is ever so slightly out, you'll hear a click. And that's what we're doing when we jog the wheel, okay? We're getting these perfectly in line so it looks like this. So this is my track Lola in orange. And all I'm going to do, okay, we haven't got anything going on here, there's no smokes and mirrors. All I've done is just put the tracks on. Okay, I've put the tracks in Cubase, and I'm not messing with any EQs or anything like we would be doing on turntables. What I am going to do on shapes is I'm just going to drag the volume like that, just for the purpose of the tutorial, because there's a lot of information here. So let's listen and see what this sounds like. Yeah, I really don't want to turn it off because I love that track, but so that's it. That's how you blend two tracks together, and that's what we're doing on the decks. Okay, it looks very complicated, and if you're sat there, you just bought a controller and you've got no idea what all the buttons do, okay, just focus on this. Okay, focus on tearing those tracks apart that you've already got, and just focus on, well, what do I do? How do I get these two tracks together? Now let's just go a little bit into the frequency bands. Okay, so what I will be doing on Lola here, so this is my track, and as we teared it apart earlier in the project file, what we saw, okay, is that at this point in the outro we still have our sub bass. Okay, so what I will be doing is on my Levy shapes, I would have the bottom knob, which is our low end, I would have that all the way down. Okay, because especially in those areas, okay, like anything sub 200 hertz is really going to clash, and that is what trance music is all about. It's all happening there. That's where all the energy is. So I would have that all the way down, and that would be about 12 o'clock on Lola there. So we've got all of our bass information going on. Now what I'm going to do at this point here of the outro is switch them over, because that is the point where the energy transfers, okay? But as you can see, even if I didn't do that, because of the way that Lola here is structured, in the outro we have no bass information at all. There's no sub. All we have is a little mid bass, a little acidic one where I think it cuts at about 200 hertz. So we've got no low end information other than our kick drum. Now the kick drum is still going to clash, so you do want to transfer those and get rid of all the low end information on Lola as this one comes in. And it's the same, generally speaking, it becomes a creative element with the mids and the highs, because you know you're just going to learn how to do those. The other two knobs above the low end is just like a creative choice really, because everyone mixes tracks different. When I'm listening and I'm scrolling through tracks, and I use the jog wheels so much. So what I'm doing is I've got my headphones on, and whilst you guys are listening to track 1, Lola, so you guys are like here, for example, in the breakdown, I'm listening to this. So in my headphones, all I can hear is this track. So I'm playing this track and I'm listening and I'm going, oh, okay, so the sub does this and it does that, and then there's this bass, but that could clash. So I'm listening to this a few times over. And then what I might even do, as we're approaching the end, we might be here in this section. So this track is really building now. And what I'm doing is I'm queuing this track up, and I'll press play at the perfect point so it's playing in time. And then I've got one ear playing the track, and then I'm listening to the speakers in the room, which is playing Lola. So now I can hear both tracks together, and I can hear, oh, actually, these tracks work really well together. So I could come in a little bit earlier, perhaps. I can really blend these tracks, and it's going to be really easy. And then what I'll do is I'll abort that, and I'll go back to my start point, and then I'm just waiting now. I'm listening to Lola, and I'm enjoying the track now because I've done all the work. I've done all the hard work of getting the next track ready. And then as this track approaches, as we're here, and it's playing, as this moment approaches, bang, I press play. At which point both tracks are now playing together, and I'm good to go. And then all my job then is just to keep it perfectly in time. Just using the jog wheels, because they will go out of time naturally, especially the older tracks, they're not always perfectly quantized to the grid. So just don't use sync. Turn sync off straight away, because you don't need that, honestly. It's just a stabilizer system, and if you never learn how to blend tracks properly, then if you ever go in a club and sync doesn't work for whatever reason, or there's some, it just isn't good, then you're going to be stuck. You're not going to know how to do it. That's going to be really embarrassing. So that's that. So what I'm just going to do now is pull this track over here, and we're just going to analyze it in the spectrum analyzer in the same way that we did my track earlier. So, oops. So let's pull that. I got a better idea. There we go. Open our span, and I just want you now, so this is the Oliver Smith remix of Shapes. Just watch it and see what goes on in the spectrum analyzer here. Of that Oliver Smith remix. So again, what I want you to focus on is this area here, because this is where our sub bass is. So what you're going to do is just watch for that information to fall away. Okay, and the final stage of this tutorial, we're going to go to my decks now, and we're going to do this transition on the decks. now 2 a.m. on the day that I started the video. Nocturnal creatures, right? So hopefully this has been helpful in some way. If you're a complete beginner, or maybe you've been mixing trance for a while, you mix vinyl, and you know that sometimes the transitions sound really great and sometimes they sound less great. So hopefully now that we've gone into those tracks and we've had a look at the sub bass, it will help you understand exactly what's happening, you know, because there's a lot of people who have been mixing trance for a long time on vinyl, but they've never actually seen these tracks in that sense, you know. So you can now view in that spectrum analyzer the ways in which these elements fall away, and the way that we have our introduction and we have a kick drum and some little percussive elements, and after 16 bars maybe we have a hi-hat or a snare added in, and then you can see the way this track's building, and you can see how that would sound muddy if you have all the information there with 2 tracks. So you kind of have like a visual image now and a visual method of visualizing that, as well as your ears, so you can kind of imagine now actually maybe there is a little bit too much information there and that's going to clash. So that's really why I wanted to make this video. Is just the key point to take away is that in your track that's currently playing, you can load in another track or you can put that piece of vinyl on. There is one perfect moment in your current track to start that next track, and then if you find that perfect moment, all you'll have to do is move up the volume and switch the bass. And honestly 95% of tracks, I would say, have used this formula over the years, over the last few decades, because it's a formula that just works. And even though we don't need it for vinyl anymore, you'll find a lot of the time a lot of artists are producing radio mixes. Sometimes they're only like 2.5 minutes long, and it's such a shame, 2.5, 3 minutes. But then when you find the extended mix of that track, you find it's using this exact formula, and that's because it just works, you know, it really does. So yeah, I really hope more people will take up learning to mix trance, because it's one of the most magical things you can do, honestly. I think for me, like, it's the most stress relieving, anxiety relieving thing there is, because I find it goes on as like a mantra. So you're mixing the trance, and when you get really confident with it and you don't even have to think about it anymore, it's just happening. It's like it's happening in the bass brain in some other space, and you're just here and you're feeling the music and you're absolutely loving it. You're just in another world completely. Meanwhile, your consciousness is doing something else. It's just crazy. It's really crazy. And what I think happens as you become more and more confident with mixing trance music is you don't necessarily end up doing all this like trick stuff or all these crazy transitions. You just end up really steady. If you watch any DJ that's been doing this for like 20, 30 years, you'll find they're just really steady. And it isn't that they don't make mistakes, it's that what comes with experience is the ability to just quickly rectify those mistakes. You have all these methods that you learn over the years where you instantly see that something isn't quite right. Now, when you haven't been doing it that long, you don't know how to fix that. So then the track starts fading out and this one isn't in yet and you're just having an absolute disaster. But what happens with experience is you just have all these little methods. You know, like I have a crate of tracks where, let's just say there's one and I want to do this risky transition of this track and I haven't quite mixed it before and I don't know how it's going to go. I have these rescue tracks where I can just quickly type 3 letters in and it'll come up, and then I can load it in, and they're tracks that have got enough bass information. I can just start them there and they're going to sound all right, and you know, they're going to rescue me. And that's what comes with experience, is little things like that. But yeah, what makes a great DJ to me is just someone who has like a unique sound and has collected the tracks over years and years and years, and you can just tell it just comes from pure passion. You know, you can't replace that. Even if their transitions aren't that good, even if they aren't that good at the technical side of mixing and DJing, it really doesn't matter when someone is just doing it with love and they're just doing it with pure passion for the music. So like, that's the type of DJ that I aspire to be, is just someone that can just take people to another place through this music. Okay, I hope this has been helpful anyway. If you have any questions, then just feel free to ask any questions that you've got, you know, if you're stuck on anything, because honestly there's so many tutorials on YouTube on how to mix trance and they're way too complicated. You know, they're just filming from the decks from above and they don't go into any of the detail of, okay, well, this is an amazing transition, but why do we do it like that? Why did that work so well? If you don't understand the tracks, then you'll never understand that. So hopefully you can just take it steady and get this foundational knowledge of actually how is the music formulated, and then once you understand that, you can go from there. And then the world is your oyster.
Okay, peace.